Hello, and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. Today, we're actually going to take a look at another VeChain. We're going to focus on VeChain's perhaps connection with the Chinese government and how can that can be a big trigger for VeChain down the line. Now, I've said between VeChain and IOTA, it seems like VeChain is mostly developing in Asia, whereas IOTA is developing in Europe and North America. I mean, there are partnerships like Deloitte and PwC, which are two of the big four accounting firms, which kind of go outside that. Obviously, Deloitte and PwC are worldwide, and they're not only in China. And DNVGL too. I think that's in Europe. But a lot of VeChain's development seems to be in Asia with BMW Singapore, and now another Chinese financial giant in PICC. The PICC deal was actually signed last year, and something like the People's Insurance Company of China, honestly, that's going to be closely tied to the Chinese government, or at least regional or local governments, but probably the central government as well. And we just got notice that Bright Foods, which is at least partly, if not wholly owned by the Shanghai municipal government, is launching a project, their milk products, with the tags from VeChain attached. These have both been actually verified. So does PwC. In fact, PricewaterhouseCoopers actually has an investment in VeChain, much like how SBI has an investment in Ripple. So these are all confirmed partnerships for VeChain, and they should help drive price in the future. But I really wanted to look into the central government aspect of VeChain, because now we know that they have a partnership with PICC, People's Insurance Company of China, and they have a connection with the Shanghai municipal government through Bright Foods, because the Shanghai municipal government basically owns Bright Foods. So now this is definitely speculation. There's some evidence, but this is speculation that I think VeChain might actually become, quote unquote, the de facto supply chain coin of China, because the Chinese government likes control. VeChain, even though it's technically headquartered in Singapore, a lot of their executives are in the China area, and I think VeChain's board is going to be much more willing to work with the Chinese government and at least invite some Chinese government scrutiny and control in the day-to-day operations, much more than IOTA or other cryptocurrencies. I haven't really seen IOTA make too many partnerships in the Chinese region in Asia, and that's probably for a good reason, because if the Chinese government has their people already in one of the supply chain uh, crypto companies, they're probably going to support that company all the way. Now, VeChain might have more inroads in America and Europe with Jaguar Land Rover, but technically, if you're in cahoots with the Chinese government and you're like one of the only supply chains there that's actually being used right now, you might actually just have like more or less an unofficial monopoly within China for supply chains, and that could be really really huge. You might say, like, some people are gonna spread rumors like, oh, but they can't really expand outside of China. That's not true, because of PwC and Deloitte. A PwC investment in your actual company means that they're going to use your supply chains, your certification process, pretty much throughout their entire system. So eventually, and there are PwC does have an announcement, I think, with VeChain in June, but we'll see what that actually is. Deloitte's already made that announcement. It's interesting that even though that PwC has an investment in VeChain, Deloitte is still using them, because PwC and Deloitte are actually competitors. But we know that Deloitte's using them because Deloitte just basically onboarded their entire certification process onto VeChain, which is weird because you have two competitors both using the same thing. I don't really know how that actually works, but both of them have confirmed, both on stage and via press announcements, that they actually are working with VeChain. But like I said, the Chinese financial giant brings up a lot of interesting theories that you could actually explore, go down that rabbit hole. But we should keep a close eye on what other municipal and or state national level governments have involvement with VeChain, because I do believe, like, just looking at their board, so many of their people, I believe, are Chinese, and I think the Chinese government actually does have a decent amount of sway and control over VeChain's direction, especially in their country. And because of that, because they have control, somewhat control over VeChain because it's so far, it's so deeply embedded in China right now. At least for the Chinese purposes, they might actually make that the official block, kind of like the official, well, not official but unofficial, but they really do have like a state mandated monopoly. It's kind of like how Chinese internet kind of works. Like they don't technically like block out Amazon, but Amazon is hella slow unless you use a VPN in China. So essentially, in that way, they're helping like Alibaba and other Chinese businesses have a huge edge over Amazon because no one wants to wait like 3 minutes for a page to load, right? So I think that might be like the deal with VeChain versus other supply chains in China. And I think that's actually quite likely because the Chinese government likes control over, especially technology companies. I mean, like they'll say like Huawei or Alibaba is technically a private company, but they take marching orders from the Chinese government. Like if the Chinese government tells them you must produce this to support X goal of ours, they will do it. And I think for the part of VeChain that's operating in China, which is a big part, they have that kind of sway as well, and that's why they might actually want to actually expand VeChain in China, which will actually make our investments go up. Hire is another big appliances business in China, and they're partnered with VeChain as well. So the governments of various localities and even the central government, if they since they're really big on blockchain, if any supply chain company in China actually wants to get into the cryptocurrency market, they might just heavily suggest VeChain over the other solutions. And no matter what you think about communism and all that other stuff, if you're really into making money, that's actually a good thing because having a unofficial monopoly in a large country like China does drive a lot of business, whether you like it or not. It does drive a lot of business, and it will make transactions go up on the blockchain, and it will generally push the price of the token up. So that's actually what I see with VeChain in China. Obviously, it's all speculation right now. It's pretty speculative right now. Instead of besides the two relationships that are there, it's pretty speculative right now. But just looking at like the current situation and how much the Chinese government is actually involved in all their technology companies, because all the technology companies, including Huawei, Alibaba, they're generally kind of like they generally have something to do with national security and the prominence of China in the international industry if they can actually like utilize that technology. And I believe VeChain and blockchain is definitely in that fold as well. So even if, let's just say, even if they can't expand too much out of China and they're only in the Chinese market, if they have most of the Chinese market, that's 1.2 plus billion people and a lot of business. Just based on that, even if they don't expand outside of China, the actual the actual value of VeChain for the industries in China would be actually very large. Now, come against VeChain doesn't actually have many of the same regulatory problems that remittance coins do because A, they're not transferring money out of the country. And that's like the main thing for the Chinese government. They will not allow you to use either fiat or crypto to transfer large amounts of money out of the country. And B, if the Chinese government actually has some control over them, they're much more likely to let them operate. And since they're not really like transmitting like money or cash, and you're just using it as a utility token within the industry, within the country, they won't have some of the same regulatory concerns that financial and remittance coins do. So without the massive regulatory barriers and with a giant market in China, which they actually might corner, that's why VeChain is really good for the future. And you just have to keep an eye out for what other partnerships they have in China and see if that might have some connection with the government, because it is quite possible that the government actually endorses VeChain, and that would give them a huge leg up with the 1.2 billion people in China and all the industries that actually come with that. So that is the episode and report for today. Check out my Twitter. It's in the description. If you like my content, please like and subscribe and share this on social media if you like my content. Thank you and have a nice day.